Shalom Aleichem. I wanted to touch a little bit about what's going on around the campuses in the universities and colleges and get a little bit of the Torah perspective on it and try to dwell in it to understand better of what's going on. Now, many of us view what's going on as a very negative development. The truth of the matter is, I think there's another way to look at things that really would shed a new light that it is for the good. HaKadosh Baruch Hu worked it out for us. It's this time to actually save us from very bad things that could happen in the future. Let's just get a little bit into how the parasha says such things. And in the parasha, in our parasha, Parashat Kedoshim, there's a famous pasuk that commends us to give honor to the elderly and to Talmidei Chachamim, to those that acquired the Torah knowledge. It says, "Mipnei seva takum vehadarta pnei zaken." Mipnei seva takum means the elderly. You have to stand up in front of them. You have to rise, and you shall honor the presence of a sage, of a Talmid Chacham, somebody who acquired wisdom, as the Gemara says. Zeh shekana. Zaken means zeh shekana chokhmah. It's a notrikon. It's a short for zeh shekana chokhmah, a person that acquired knowledge. Obviously, we're talking about the knowledge of the Torah. Why? Because the Gemara asks, and this is brought down over here in Rashi. It's a Gemara in Kiddushin Lamed Bet Amud Bet. Yachol zaken ashmai. Are we talking about somebody who's wicked? Let's say he is very wise, he's smart, but could it be also that he's wicked? It says no. Talmud lomar zaken en zaken ela shekana chokhmah. So it's got to be somebody who acquired the wisdom. The Gemara mentions it's got to be someone with wisdom and morality as well. It is something that really gives us a little bit perspective, because many of those campuses have also professors and teachers, and many of the students are students of the elite academy at the world. They are the leading students, they are the leading professors, they are the leading academia at the world. So therefore, maybe they have a point. Maybe we just don't see the point correctly, and they are correct and right. Is it so? Over here, it says that the honor we'll give is only to a person that acquired wisdom, that acquired wisdom with morality. Now, maybe they have morality. That's what they're preaching. They're preaching morality. But you need to see a little bit more than that. And let's touch on those points. First of all, I like to point out that what the Torah says over here, that it's got to be somebody who's not zaken ashmai, somebody with moral values. It's not a separate thing. It's not that you have to have someone with two qualities. One quality is the wisdom, and another quality is the moral overview about himself and on the world at large. But rather, it goes hand in hand. It's one thing. When a person doesn't have the right morals, it's lacking in his wisdom. And we'll explain that a little bit more, and we'll see what that means. There is, in the tefillah, when we say Shmoneh Esrei, there's a bracha that says, "Ata chonen l'adam dat u'melamed le'enosh bina. Chonenu mitcha chokhmah bina v'dat. Baruch ata Hashem chonen l'dat." Now, there's three things here: chokhmah, bina, v'dat. What's the difference between those three things? The Torah speaks about chokhmah, bina, v'dat. The difference is, Rashi says, in the Torah, chokhmah means wisdom. What kind of wisdom? It's knowledge. A person that stores a lot of information, he's considered a chacham, which means you read a lot, you hear a lot, you learn a lot, you have a lot of information. That's chokhmah. Then bina is an aspect deeper than that. It's something that you understand, not only know, but understand. You understand the deeper meaning of things. That's what it's called. Bina, lehavin davar mitoch davar. You hear something and you understand what's the deeper meaning, or what's behind what a person is telling you, what's the reason, what was the purpose that he's saying, what is happening behind those words. that's called bina. That's why, for example, Chachamim tell us that Isha nichona bebina yetera. A woman has that extra wisdom of understanding davar mitoch davar. She sees something and she can understand something a little bit deeper than a man can on the first glance, on the first look. Then you have what is called da'at, chokhmah, bina, v'da'at. Da'at is da'at elokit, is already ruach hakodesh, Rashi says, which means a person that dwells so deep into the wisdom that then HaKadosh Baruch Hu opens the gate for him to understand things that you wouldn't be able to understand without Hashem giving it to him. And that is the idea of da'at, chokhmah, bina, v'da'at. And in the bracha we're saying the following: Ata chonen la'adam da'at. You give Adam, a person, Adam, da'at. You give that ruach hakodesh, that divine wisdom to a person. Umlamed le'enosh bina. You also teach the bina, which means havin davar mitoch davar, deeper understanding. V'chonenu itcha chokhmah, bina, v'da'at. We ask for all those things. But if you pay attention, it says two things here: Adam, אתה חונן לאדם דעת, ומלמד לאנוש בינה. There's Adam and there's Enosh. Enosh means human beings. Human beings could get the da'at, but who gets human beings get bina, but who gets the da'at? That's Adam. And that is something that is precisely written in that way. Why? Because Chachamim tell us that Am Yisrael only were called Adam. Atem קרואים Adam, ואין עובדי כוכבים קרואים Adam. Which means the title of Adam was given only to Am Yisrael. Adam could get da'at. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives Am Yisrael da'at. Why is it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives to Am Yisrael da'at? He connects with Am Yisrael. He gives them this divine knowledge that you can't get otherwise. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to open the gate of knowledge and give Am Yisrael that exact thing. So when you take a look at the Gur Aryeh, the Maharal Prague, in the beginning of the Torah, mamash in the beginning of the Torah, we speaks about the words of Bereshit bara Elokim, in the beginning. But Rashi tells us it doesn't mean in the beginning. What the real understanding, Hapidrash, is Bereshit bishvil Reshit. Bishvil Reshit. What's Reshit? Rashi gives three different explanations what it is. Two of them is בשביל התורה שנקראת ראשית ובשביל ישראל שנקראת ראשית, which means הקדוש ברוך הוא created the world for the Torah and for Israel. So he says over here that it's interesting that we find that Am Yisrael were established last from the other nations, just like the person, Adam, the person was established last from all the creation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Adam last, on the sixth day, right before he had a closing on his whole creation, before he created everything else, and then the last was Adam. Also, Am Yisrael were the last to be as a nation, and Am Yisrael will be the ones wrapping also last the entire history, bringing to an end. So he explains the following things. He says, כלל הדבר הזה, שהעולם נברא בשביל דבר שהוא ראשית והתחלה לכל הבריאה, כמו שהתורה הייתה התחלה, כי מן ההתחלה נמשך הכל. The Torah was created for the Torah, because the beginning, everything goes after the beginning is the Torah. וכן בשביל הדבר שהוא תכלית ושלמות הבריאה, שבו ישלם הכל ובא בסוף. And it goes through from the beginning to the end with the same purpose, with the same agenda, with the same idea until the end, and that is for עם ישראל. וזהו ישראל, that those are the last. ובשביל כך היה דבר בישראל שלא היה בכל האומות. עם ישראל had something unique that the other nations did not have. כי לא תמצא אומה באחרונה כמו ישראל. There's no nation that was last, just like עם ישראל. Why? מורה על שישראל הם משלימים את כל העולם, because last is completion, is finishing something, and Am Yisrael are finishing the creation. לפיכך הם באחרונה, therefore they are the last to be formed as a nation. ובדבר זה יתבהר מה שאמרו חכמים, אתם קוראים אדם, אשר ישראל דומים אל האדם. עם ישראל are similar to Adam הראשון that completed the creation. שכל בעלי החיים נבראו בראשונה. First, הקדוש ברוך הוא created animals, and he created the trees, and he created the light, and he created the world, and everything else. But the person, Adam, was created last in order to complete. לומר שאדם משלים הכל, וכן כל האומות נבראו ראשונה וישראל באחרונה. So does all other nations were created first, and Am Israel was created last. And that is something that really gives us an understanding over here that Am Israel, that are completing the world, they're getting the wisdom that completes the entire wisdom that the Kadosh Baruch Hu created the world for. Kadosh Baruch Hu created the world for the wisdom of the Torah, and Am Israel, he created that in the beginning, but that is the completion of the world. Now, when you understand that the wisdom of Torah, the wisdom comes together with being moral, with doing the right thing, with looking into what's correct and the right thing to do, that's something that helps complete, give the world the completion, puts the world in the right path and in the final path to the completion of the entire time until Mashiach comes. When we explain those very ideas, we need to see the difference between Am Israel and Umot HaOlam when it comes to academia. When a person goes to college, what do they do over there? In universities, what do? They learn different traits, they learn different subjects, but what do they learn? They most of the time learn information. They gather a lot of information. Sometimes they make different things to be able to go a little bit deeper under the surface in order to understand, test different things, but it's very different in yeshivot. When a kid goes to yeshiva from a very young age, they don't train him and give him a lot of information. They don't train him to store as much information as possible, but rather what he does all day, he trains his head all the time to go deeper and deeper into understanding of the Gemara. That's why you find something very interesting that many people complain. They'll go to learn a whole zman, half a year in yeshiva, and when they come back home for Beda Zmanim, the father asks them, so what did you learn? So they tell him three pages of Gemara, 3 blots. 3 pages of the Gemara, that's what I sent you for a whole half a year. You couldn't do more than that. You're wasting your time. What's the idea? 3 pages of information, but the depth that those 3 pages have are endless, is endless. It goes deeper and deeper, and therefore the students in yeshiva go deeper in understanding. Every day they find a nuance that they didn't hear yesterday. They understand a deeper feeling of their knowledge. They feel the knowledge. They live the knowledge. They get to actually hold it in their hand. They feel it. It's like tangible, and they go deeper and deeper in understanding. That's what the Rebbe does every day in the class. He shows them and opens the gates of wisdom to them, to things that they didn't understand beforehand, and that gives them a new perspective. So for so many beautiful things, and open their eyes, they open their understanding, they finally get to things that they wouldn't get otherwise. And that is the wisdom we're talking about. That's a wisdom of the Torah, that's a wisdom of the yeshivot. And then when they go to life with such depth, they understand things on the level of bina, להבין דבר מתוך דבר, much deeper. They have the utensils, they have the abilities to go deeper and deeper and understand very quickly something that other people don't have that knowledge, that ability, that the training to do. And therefore, Am Yisrael has that qualification of completing the wisdom that Hashem created the world for, which eventually can get them into the next level as well, and that is that, to understand something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu only gives you as Ruach HaKodesh. Now, when we understand this, let's put things now in perspective. When we're talking about those college riots, they call them protests, the riots, or universities riots, really, who's there? If you really think about it, those youngsters and even the professors, they mostly come from broken homes. They mostly are extreme progressive people that don't have any morals, and they are completely distorted in the way they're thinking. Moreover, those people are, according to studies, most of them are on something. They're high on something. Here, I'll read you of what I wrote over here. And I write over here, a study revealed that almost half of the surveyed college students met the criteria of at least one substance use disorder. Additionally, in the 2019 monitoring, the future survey noted elevated rate of marijuana and various illicit drug use, notably cocaine, all different types he brings over here, especially among the individuals in the typical college age range, typically in the early to mid 20s. So we see there's so many of them that are high on something. And then so many are suicidal. And this I read from the Wikipedia. It says like this: suicide rank as one of the leading causes of death among students in the United States. Approximately 24,000 college students attempt suicide each year. A whooping 24,000 kids, with 1,100 tragically succeeding. These alarming statistics places suicide as the second leading cause of death among the U.S. college students. Moreover, around 12% of college students report experiencing suicidal thoughts during their first 4 years of college, with 2.6 experiencing persisting suicidal ideation. Additionally, a staggering 65% of college students have connection to someone who has attempted or died by suicide. And this goes on and on. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, called NAMI, N-A-M-I, nearly half of the students' population in the educational system has been diagnosed with or treated for depression. So we're talking about a society in colleges that are on something, most of them. They are depressed. Many of them are suicidal. And who's going out to the streets? Those that are so miserable. They have no life. They come from broken homes. We all know what goes on today in America. So many broken homes. It's just the amount of kids that are broken from such a relationship of the parents is beyond. And who feeds them? Who gives them ideas? Where do they get all their ideas from? They're all day on TikTok and other nonsense. This is what gives them all the information, and this is what gives them all different types of ideas of what's right and what's wrong. So if their Rebbe is TikTok, and if they are depressed, and they have no, and the kids, most of them are kids. They don't know yet right from wrong. They think they do. They don't. So when we have those people that don't have guidance, they're anywhere miserable, and they're going and let's put the numbers in reality. We're talking about handful. They're not that many. There's I think the new studies show that they're about something a little bit more than 10% of kids, and most of them are not even college students. They're just outsiders. So therefore, we found that this idea of trying to make a lot of commotion is something that really doesn't hold water. But moreover, I was afraid and I was scared for many years now when I see all these immigrants coming in from countries that really are anti-Semitic, that really hates Jews, they're really there to fight Jews as much as possible. And they're coming and becoming our neighbors. We see them all over. You walk down the street and you see them all over. And this is something that goes under the radar. But finally, when they go and they protest and they scream and they shout and they make riots and the colleges are closing because of them and universities have to teach on Zoom, that really opens the eyes of the Americans. They really see the vast majority of Americans see that there's a growing cancer over here. You have to treat it before it takes over the body, like it did in Europe. In Europe, it took over the country and took over the continent. And now there's places over there that half the country are immigrants that are destroying the country. The crime rate is beyond, and Europe doesn't look anymore like it was. It could completely change its colors, its face. It's something totally different. So therefore, maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to save us, although Europe, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need to save after all they did to Am Yisrael throughout the generations. But America was always good to the Jews. It's a Medinat Chesed, there's no question about it, helping Jewish people and they're protecting Jewish people. It's been like this already for a few generations. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu could be that is now coming out to protect Americans and show them there's a problem here. Take care of the problem. That always reminds me of Rashi that we learned in last week's parasha, Parashat Achrei Mot. Rashi tells us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu to warn Aaron not to go into the Kodesh. Al yavo b'chol עת אל הקודש מבית לפרוכת. Go into Kodesh HaKodeshim inside. You can't just go in there whenever you want. There's guidelines of where you could go. But then he says to him something like this. He says, Velo yamut. You should not go so you want to die. Why does he need to warn Aaron in such a harsh language and threaten him so you won't die? Just tell him the law. You don't need to threaten him that you won't die. And Rashi tells us an answer, but he puts it in a parable. He says that there was a person that a doctor that went to a sick person, and he saw him, he visited him, and he told him some instructions, do this and don't do that. And then he left. But then there was a more concerning doctor that came afterwards, somebody that cared more, and he told him, remember that patient that used to sit right near you? He passed away 2 days ago. You know why? Because he didn't follow the instructions. Here are the instructions, and make sure you follow them to the teeth so you won't die like the other one. Why did he need to say that? Because he cared more. He wanted to make sure that the patient completely follows the instructions and doesn't ignore them or doesn't take them lightly. Make sure you do everything exactly the way I explained to you. And this is really an eye-opener that whenever you have something that is growing, a cancer that's growing, something that becomes fatal, you don't treat it as Europe didn't treat it. So it's going to go to the point of no return. It might be already too late when you decide that there's a problem here. And therefore, the riots that goes on now around the campuses could be that's exactly like that the doctor that comes and warns, be careful. There's something terrible going on over here. Take a look what happened in other places. There's another Rashi on the same idea by Parashat Shmini. Over there, instead of 2 doctors and 1 patient, over there the Rashi tells us there's 1 doctor and 2 patients. 1 doctor that went to the first patient and he saw him and he told him, you can eat whatever you want, you can drink whatever you want, no medicine necessary, goodbye. Then he went to the next patient in the same room, and he tells him, you can't do this and you can't do that, very harsh treatment, painful treatment, and all different type of things. So the family was there. They're saying, we don't understand. The other patient that you saw a minute ago, he's seeking the same thing. Why is it that for him you let everything do? And for us, you're restricting so many things and you're giving us such very hard treatments. So he told him, very simple. The other one, he's already in stages that he can't be cured. He's already advanced stage of sickness. So therefore, let him enjoy the last days of his life. But you you're still on the beginning stages of the sickness, and therefore it could be treated if you do what I tell you. And that is exactly what happens over here. I think what we're seeing right now is the beginning stages of the problem that's arising, and therefore when we see the problem comes out to the streets, it already becomes not a Jewish problem, it becomes a world problem, a globe problem, and people realize that, they know that, and they starting to first open their eyes, secondly starting to take care of them. The more they come out to the street, they scream and shout and have their signs and threaten people and use violence. That's in a way good for us, because that very idea that something is growing in our backyard without anybody noticing, when it's going to explode eventually, should explode now and not later on when it's beyond cure.